cook. You can see that our mixture is at a boil, and you'll want to keep this at a heat where it's at a rolling boil, but it doesn't boil over. Stir it occasionally to make sure it doesn't get cooked under the bottom of the kettle. And if you'll look at these kernels, you'll see that although the color may be already a little bit different, it still looks just like corn. We'll wait about an hour and I'll show you, but you'll be able to see the kernels starting to swell up, and the outer shell or the hull on there will start slipping off and burning off. Let it cook for about an hour. Take a look at it. As you're cooking, it'll naturally cook off some of the water. Make sure that you add water to it. Otherwise it'll get to about the consistency of concrete on the bottom of this, and you don't want that. So go ahead and make sure you keep adding water. This has been on here for about an hour. I'm going to add a little bit more water and then rinse some of these kernels and show you how they've changed in the way that they look. Here's our corn that's been cooking for about an hour, and I've rinsed it off so that hopefully you can see it. But if you look at that, you can sort of see that these kernels are swelling up. You look at some of them, like the one on the tip of my finger, and you can see that it's actually beginning to look like hominy. The outer shell of these, or the outer coating of the seed, is beginning to slip off and burn off a little bit. You may also notice the little ends of these where it attaches to the cob. I call it the eye, but some of the eyes are beginning to pop out, and once those have popped out, that's when your hominy will basically be done. If you look at that one, you can see that the skin is coming off of it, but we'll let it cook in here a little bit longer. Take a look at it and then start rinsing it. Our hominy's been on the stove for a little over 4 hours. And as I said earlier, this is soft wood ashes, mostly pinon pine, some juniper in there, and it tends to take a little bit longer to cook with this because it doesn't have as much lye in it as hardwood ashes would. But it's finished enough. You can keep cooking it much longer if you'd like, but I have some that are already cleared off here. You can see with these, the little eye that I talked about has popped out, the skin has started to come off, and it looks a little bit more like the hominy that you'd find in a can. Of course it's red because it's red corn instead of white corn, which most of it in the can, or yellow corn, which most of it in the can is made from. But you can see that that's pretty much finished. Last step is to wash it and then dry it. You have to wash the ash off of the hominy before it's finished. Traditionally, this would be done with a basket. This is a Tarahumara Indian basket used for rinsing hominy. With this amount of ash in it, I'm going to go ahead and use a modern colander. Either one will do. I wouldn't recommend aluminum though. But in order to do it, pour your hominy right in there. And rinse. This also can be done in your kitchen, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because it may clog up your pipes. But just keep rinsing until all the ash is washed out. Washing it this way also helps get any of the rest of the outer shell that's on there off. You can see how it looks much different than it did when it was just regular corn. At this point, your hominy is finished. You can see how the eyes have popped out of most of this and how the outer covering of the seed is cooked off. At this point, you could eat it if you wanted to. Just throw it in with some kind of meat. Or if you want to keep it for later use, dry it and it'll keep indefinitely. You can put it in a dehydrator or in a dry climate. Spread it out on screens or even a bed sheet will do. Spread it out and let the sun dry it. Now that we've made our hominy, it's time to cook it and eat it. There's different ways that hominy can be prepared. It's used in masa harina, which makes the outer casing of a tamale. It's also used in grits. Other than that, it's mainly used just in hominy dishes. I'll be honest with you though, I've tried this red corn hominy as grits. I still prefer regular old quick grits. With Mexican foods like pozole, menudo, I hate to admit this, but I still prefer the large white kerneled Mexican style hominy. However, for American Indian dishes, it's hard to beat Osage red corn hominy or any other kind of homemade hominy out of flour corn. To cut up your meat for hominy, just cut it up like you would any kind of stew meat. Cube it a little bit. Cover it with water. No need to put any kind of spices or anything in there yet. Now for cooking this meat, there's no science here. I'd bring it up to a boil for a few minutes and then keep it on a simmer for the rest of the afternoon, because I cook it as long as I can until the stuff starts to shred, and I'll take a potato masher and make sure all the rest of it's shredded. You can leave it in cubes, no big science to it. Just don't let it overboil. Well, I did exactly what I mentioned not to do and let this boil over because I wasn't paying close enough attention. But I do want to mention, see this scum sort of stuff on the top of the pot here? And there's some of it still floating in the here with this beef. You can see a little bit right there. If this hadn't boiled over, there'd be a film of it on the top here. A lot of people would recommend to skim that off and throw it out. I just go ahead and leave it in there. I think that it adds to the flavoring. But with this, keep this at a low simmer, and I'll let it go for the next several hours, possibly up to 6 hours. You almost can't overcook this. With making hominy, the way that I'm doing it, there's no science to it. You can just let it cook for the longest amount of time possible. Once we add the hominy in here, it'll mix the flavors together a little bit more. The beef's been cooking for about 2 hours. It's starting to soften up. I'm going to go ahead and shred it. This is the way I do it.